John Pavlik from Rutgers. David, let me first just thank you for a brilliant and inspiring talk. My question is, thinking about what one of the other speakers said, Neil Buddy, about unbundling the news, I wonder what your thoughts are on whether news media can do a better job of getting into the media where young people live and getting into Facebook, getting a bigger presence in MySpace, getting more of their stuff on YouTube, places where young people are already engaged, and populating that space with a news conversation.
Yeah, I think it happens, and it's really interesting to see. I've been on Facebook for a few years now, and it's really taken off, especially among people roughly my age in the last 6 months, and a lot of posts going back and forth. So, and I think that should be welcomed by journalists, and certainly encouraged. I mean, I'm a friend or a fan, I don't know, of the New York Times on my Facebook page, and I get updates every once in a while. There've got to be ways. One of the problems is that newspapers tend to think of themselves as bounded domains, that to protect. I mean, the New York Times and the Washington Post are not going to highlight each other's reporting. They will mention it, of course, on a daily basis. But each news network, understandably, likes to try to keep people within its network. There might be ways, and I think the News Trust, as described yesterday, is one of those places that tries to take the best of journalism, and then will send readers back to the newspapers. So I think that more of that's going to happen. My fantasy, I don't have time to do this, but my fantasy would be to have like a daily Pulitzer, the equivalent of a daily Pulitzer, of like the number one story that holds leaders accountable on any given day, and to have like a group that would vote on what story it is that holds leaders accountable. And I think that's the kind of thing that you could imagine subscribing to on Facebook. Like, I don't have a lot of time. Everyone here, and young people as well, are saying, I've got too much information, but I would read that one story that a group of people interested in journalism would feel like it's the most important story of the day. And it would be, the Abu Ghraib story, of course, if it came out on that particular day, or it would be, the Walter Reed Washington Post story. But it would be, the thousands of other stories in small towns that might trickle up into the national consciousness. So I think there are ways to help the news industry out of this kind of bifurcated mindset.
We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Yes, Mark Malazchek, K-12 coordinator, Babylon Schools. I teach the high school version of the news literacy course that we designed here in Stony Brook. And one point that you made resonated with me, that if we engage the students with some hard-hitting journalism, they are captivated by it. And just a quick story followed up by a question. I came into my news literacy class one morning and I said, okay, how many people watched Obama's address to the joint session of Congress? And literally about 1/5, about 20% had watched it. And I was prepared for that. So I had prompted about 10 key minutes from the speech, some of the most important things that were addressed that night, followed by 2 5-minute vignettes from competing networks that analyzed the speech. And then we watched everything, and the kids commented and discussed the speech, and then they critically analyzed the analyses from the 2 competing networks. And on the way out, they absolutely loved it. They thought it was phenomenal, best lesson of the day type thing. And that's the good news. But in your opinion, what's the hook for we K-12 people to get them to do this on their own, and potentially even cultivate it among the parents and the community of our school district, that they're supporting us? Because I agree with you, the news habits are formed when they're young. It's sort of our job to cultivate that so that when they come to you at the next level of study, they have a foundation. And if they don't have that foundation, the cycle only spins downward faster. So if you could summarize, what's the one hook that you think we should be doing down at the developmental levels?
Well, I think it's really important for us to strike the right balance of we are not cheerleaders of journalism, even though I value journalism deeply, and I can't go through my day without NPR and the New York Times and my local media. And the New Yorker once a week and things like that. But at the same time, we have to remain critical as well. And I think that that critical stuff is really, can be very interesting to students and can be very sexy to students. And when, again, if students realize that they can use that information to foster conversations, it's really useful. And we're in a rare time when a lot of young people are really inspired by Obama. So, you know, he's got the national attention. And it's really easy, I think, for us to sell to some parents that, you know, holding leaders accountable is important, whether it's a Democratic or a Republican president. We do have an uphill battle with some parents and some teachers because this is the demographic that's moved away from news. It's not the teenagers of today, it's the people who are their parents' age. So that's a really important thing to take away, that, you know, we can in this room say, well, I read the news, all my friends read the news, my kids read the news, but yet we have to be aware that there's a whole generation that's moved away from news. There's always been an engaged minority of news consumers. There always will be. But too many people are not following the news. So we have to really take that extra step to explain to parents and teachers the importance of news in a democracy and the beauty of it when it's done well.
Let me just end by saying a couple of things. One of the reasons we're getting together is so that we can share best practices over time. I'm not sure there's one answer that's the magic bullet mark on how we're going to engage all of young people. There's lots of ways. So in our own program here, as you can see, they may be gimmicks. We assign the first day after our news blackout, we make all of the students take their computers and select a news site to be their homepage for the rest of the semester. They can choose any news site they want, but it guarantees every time they open their computer every day, they're going to go to there. And it's habit. I agree with David, and I'm of the opinion that we should assign these things. We should make them do it. They don't like to be required to do this. I think that exposing students for the first time to the news in a very regular, in a routine way, is something that is very beneficial. And, you know, they push back, but I think it's important. And then we try all these incentives. We have news bowls, and I like the idea of having people who can have a conversation together. You know, one of the things about new media is we have the ability, as I said yesterday, to extend the conversation beyond the classroom. If you can get a blog up and have students during the course of the week, even if it's just the students who are interested in the news, talk to each other, post a story, post a video, we can extend the experience far beyond the classroom. One of the things, though, just to summarize at the end, is this idea that we will have a clearinghouse. One of the things we'll discuss this afternoon before we leave is the idea of a clearinghouse, so that if Charles Bierbauer in South Carolina gets progress and traction trying something, we all know it. And if some of the high school teachers are finding really interesting ways to do this, we all know it and can share it with each other, because I think it's very important. With that, two things. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, but before we do that, will you please join with me in thanking David for his talk?
Thanks.